All right, what's going on, guys? So let's talk about the Biden versus Trump debate that happened this past Thursday. Now, a lot of talk is coming out, but what you have to realize is that there are different target audiences. There's a different level of awakening, and the perception of reality among people is very different. So if you've been following me on this channel, you know that I talk about audience 1, audience 2, and audience 3. And so this is not some like you watch this video and you think you can comprehend everything. It takes years of research and understanding to move to the next level. And more importantly, you have to have a Holy Spirit inspired, godly perspective behind things. Otherwise, it's just going to look like craziness. And so this is why people with this whole operation, right, it's targeting different audiences and there's a different objective, but there's a holistic sovereignty that God is playing out before our very eyes so that you can progress to the next stage. And so when I talk about certain things to other people, it's going to sound like conspiracy. It's going to sound like some conjecture. Where's the research, the evidence? It's a compilation, right? It's a combination of all of the years of things for which you've seen everything else. And for those that are more awakened, to the people that are less awakened, they're going to see it as, we already knew that, but you don't realize it, or you haven't realized it until now. And this is why I want to talk about these things in the light of audience 1, 2, and 3. And so if you know my presentation of this prior, you know that this whole operation that somebody, God, of course, but people below that are in positions of power, they're orchestrating it, making it look like a good versus evil. And to others, it looks like a good controlling everything, white hats controlling everything. And I'm going to talk about it with regards to that perspective for each lens as it's appropriate when I get to that point. So audience 1, right? So how do you perceive audience, the Biden versus Trump thing from an audience 1 perspective? The audience 1, the goal for that from anyone that's at a higher perspective is to normalize that group. This is the majority of the population, right? The awakened group, which I'll get to, and the enlightened group, which I'll get to later, is a minority, and the enlightened is a very small percentage. It's 1% of the population. So this is why those that are into the deep conspiracy and the research and the Q and all this stuff, they're going to be shunned and they're not going to be accepted by the people in the majority and even in the minority. And so there's a perception of reality that is being functioned or that people are operating in within each group. And so that's why when you talk to people in audience 1, you have to, in some sense, bring it down to their level such that people say, oh, I see, that makes sense to me because you're speaking to me, speaking that to me in that language, right? And so let's talk about it. What is audience 1? What is their perception of this? Their perception, and probably from those that are in audience 2, they would say that this was done purposefully, and we'll talk about that here in a second, which is to shock people awake, right? We'll get to the conspiracies and all the other stuff in Awaken 2, but the first thing you've got to realize in audience 1 is that most of the population they're either simple, they're not well researched, or they rely on superficial characteristics, right? And so that's why this debate, when people take points away from it, they're talking about how Biden was senile, he's not qualified, Trump looked strong, but even the narrative of Trump looked strong, but quote unquote, he lied. Again, you say lie from this perspective because again, there's an echo chamber here of mainstream media and other people believing that their truth, their facts is within their realm of, oh, that's conspiracy, that's crazy, 2020 was not stolen and all that stuff. That's what they believe. And that's why they're perpetuating a narrative of Trump is a liar, but he looks strong and all that. So anybody that's in this audience, what they're witnessing clearly, and even CNN and these guys, they've talked about it. It's all over the news now, and they're not protecting him anymore. We'll talk about that conspiracy here in a second. Again, operating within the realm of audience 2, is that they're making fun of Biden from the perspective of what they see. They saw him stumble. They saw him slur. They saw him. And again, I'm not here to make fun of elderly, and people even within this group would argue this is elder abuse. But at the same time, their perspective is you need to have somebody that is strong, and again, nothing against elders, but you have to have somebody that's strong to take the highest office or the highest, best job or the most important job in the most free country, if you want to argue, in the world, the number one country in the world, if you're going to take the top job, then you cannot come off as weak, feeble, and again, the perspective or the projection that Biden is giving, which is that he looks senile, he looks like he's suffering from dementia, and not the opposite, which is strong, confident, bold. He prepared 1 week. And so within this realm, what people are talking about is, and they're getting awakened to it, is that, look, he prepared for a week offsite, and he couldn't even come up and say what he wanted to say. He couldn't even string together two coherent thoughts. Trump even made fun of him in a viral clip of, I don't even know what he said. I don't think he knows what he said, right? People were laughing about it. I was cracking up. As a member, if I put my audience one hat on, I would have been cracking up, and I did crack up. I bursted out laughing at some of these things at certain moments because Biden was so bad, right? So this is where people have to be shaken awake and said, you know what? I guess you're right. For the top job of the land, this guy doesn't look qualified. He doesn't project strong boldness. It looks like, Putin and Xi Jinping, they're going to walk all over him with regards to geopolitical, tensions and things that need to be done from a first world country. And so this is why people are all over are talking now about this is crazy. And so if you're a talk show host, if you're doing influencer type stuff, you're making commentary, those that are operating in audience one, they're targeting these majority people, making fun of Biden, making fun of his speech and all that, but at the same time giving the caveat that this is not how you should treat elders at all, but the person who's taking this top job, right? So people know that. So within this realm, there's a level of maturity to understand, to give some grace to an old person. It's not about you being old and that's wrong. You can be old and you can be qualified to do a job, but they are speaking in this superficial sort of ecosystem for which people are, giving conversation. They're talking about it and saying, what would be a good qualification? What do you think about this and that, how he said it? And they're talking about it within this realm of superficial characteristics as a debater, right? So let's talk about audience two. Audience two is those that are more awakened. And this is where you talk about conspiracy theory type things and deeper sort of analysis. So one of the prevailing theories that are coming out of this to those that are thinking deeper is that they're still under the realm or their perception of reality, their facade of the presidency as we know it. They're operating within this facade of, we have a president who is the president of the United States, who's currently the president and the former. They're not thinking about this other stuff, which I'll talk about here in a second, but they're operating within this realm and they're thinking, okay, so somebody needs to be president of the Democratic Party or the nominee. And so what they're thinking here is more individualistic. They're dispelling the narrative that is of the mainstream media. And they're thinking, okay, maybe what's happening as a quote unquote conspiracy or a planned conspiracy is that they are doing this debate early before. And again, it's never been this early. They're doing it early such that they can have an excuse for Biden to be taken off so that they can run the narrative now that he's not qualified and we need somebody else like Gavin Newsom or whoever else to take his spot. And then we can swap him to usher in somebody else early on. So they planned this. Again, this is within this realm of the awakened. They planned this debate early so that they can throw Biden under the bus and they can swap them out early so that the new person can gain momentum, or however it is that it's going to be done. And so this is where people are thinking deeper with regards to what is the objective when operating under the facade of the presidency, right? They're operating in this reality that they believe is that, we still have this president who is our president and was duly elected. They don't probably believe in the election, interference and being stolen, that theory and all that stuff. But the thing to note here is that those that are in awakened, right, still operating under the facade of the presidency as we know it, they think that to those that are in audience one, we already knew it. We already knew that Biden was senile. It's only now that they're coming out and saying this, and they're all in one tune, one chorus, singing the song of, Biden is not qualified and he did a bad job. What was so different 1, 2, 3 years ago when he was still stumbling, slurring his words, and didn't look qualified, and isn't qualified. But why is it that they're changing their tune? So they are realizing, those that are in Awakened in audience 2, they are talking to audience 1 and they're saying, hey, listen, we already knew that. Now you are awake. Now you see it. Come follow us now because we told you so. So these two are sort of synonymous, where if you're upgrading to the next level and you're kind of operating here, right? Now, audience 3, as I've said before, is the 1%. This is the people like myself that believe that there is something else going on with regards to devolution and the continuity of government. Again, the premise here is that the election actually was stolen. Trump and the White Hats, these guys let it happen, and the military behind the scenes, because they're setting up such a massive worldwide sting operation, they let it happen, and they placed certain people in important positions of power. They've already taken off certain pieces, bad people, or the bad people have taken a plea deal, or some kind of like exchange in exchange to do the work that they were told to do. So it's basically a huge like movie that we're watching, right? Movies, actors, people were replaced. You have people in masks, like Hollywood style masks. That's why people talk about Biden being a masked president, and that the real president, he's somewhere else. He was either executed and his funeral service was done on the day of the inauguration and all that stuff. This is where, because it's so massive or so deep, the threats, the bad guys, the deep state, the level of evil is so bad that they had to do it this way, and they are controlling, in some sense, a lot of it. And yes, there is some sense of organic discussion and events and outcomes and all that, but it's like playing chess. You know the moves, if you're in the end game, how you've got to force mate in 10, right? And by mate, I mean checkmate, if you know the terminology. You force checkmate in 10, and they can move within the controlled sort of area that they need to move. So there is some level of freedom, but it is also isolated. There's boundaries. So this is what's happening, where the actors, whether they are actually evil and have taken a deal, they've been told what to do, or they are evil, they don't know what's going on, but they are within this boundary of being controlled. All of the white hat, their plan is still working. So this is where we think, a lot of us, that Biden is part of the white hat operation, but he's playing a role like in a movie as a villain to awaken everybody else. He's acting stupid, he's acting senile, he's doing all that as a plan, as part of a plan to awaken the population, so that later on the big drops will be brought forth. And so this is why we talk about things like the change of batter. Okay, the change of batter is happening. This is Q stuff. This is where, from an audience 3 perspective, it's all orchestrated. But from an audience 2 and even 1%, not even 1, but audience 2 perspective, this is where people are starting to realize, oh, Biden is being swapped for somebody else, and this is organic within the Democratic Party, and this is what audience 2 believes. But audience 3 believes that all of this is orchestrated by the white hats, but it's being allowed by the bad guys, the black hats, to do this as part of a bigger plan. Now, to what degree is it 100%, controlled? And maybe it's like more than 50% controlled, but within, again, the context of the evil is going to do their evil to try to do their best. That's where there's some argument within the audience 3 community. But the point here is that a lot of this is controlled, okay? So there's something bigger going on behind the scenes. And that's what this is about. And so that's why, guys, when I say things, right, you have to act, and this is speaking to people that are in audience 3 and you're enlightened. When you're speaking to people in this audience of audience 1, audience 2, you speak to them at their level, which is that, haha, yeah, Biden is, if you're talking to audience 1 members, haha, Biden is so stupid, look at him, he's not qualified, ha ha ha, really knowing that Biden is controlled, he's a white hat actor, and he's just playing his part, right? Same with Pence, same with many other people. If you're here now, then you can begin to say, look, do you see how bad the deep state is? You can speak to them about what they're trying to do and how, Trump is being persecuted and all this stuff. And then later you will have them believe what mainstream media has said as being lies, but is actually the truth, which is that eventually audience 2 will then graduate to audience 3 if possible, or if not, they can at least at minimum, understand that certain narratives, like the 2020 election being stolen, all of that stuff is then being brought to light and saying, look, we told you so. So everybody that's at a higher level will then talk down to the next level and say, we told you so. We told you so. We already knew this. We already knew that this was the truth, but you just figure this out right now. So this is the plan. This is the overall plan of what the Great Awakening is. And you have to segment it by the audience so that you know where everybody is at. And so there hasn't been, I think, many comms, many things being dropped from the actual debate itself. The actual debate itself was meant to target audience 1 and audience 2 members so that they can heighten their awareness and move forward into the next stage if at all possible. But it's being done, again, as a big orchestration. Again, if you're looking at it from audience 3, for a reason, for a purpose. So this is where I want to just give this as a quick overview. More people are talking about it. And if you are listening to other people or takeaways, analysis within that audience, you have to understand it from that audience, right? So the same goes for any event. I'm just talking about this event because it's going viral or whatnot. People are discussing it. Even the normies are discussing it. But this is where we are at. So again, more to come, guys. Just want to give you guys this very quickly. It's a good time, but it's moving in the right direction, right? It's moving in the right direction. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.